Can I give kids in my neighborhood candy when they trick or treat? Exclamation mark. Okay, so I guess it's a question. Let's see what he has to say.
So this is a complicated issue, which I have to be honest, I feel like most people aren't properly trained to discuss, especially in the English language. And when something's presented in a knowledge-rooted way, they get really upset and they start to attack. So I'm going to say this, and I want people to listen very carefully. Number one is, in fatwa, we don't care about what something was, what some pagans did 8,000 years ago. They're not doing that now. It has a completely different meaning. It's a very culturally neutral holiday. So then it falls under urf, custom, and the asl for urf, the foundation for any custom, as long as there aren't overtly haram things in it, is permissible. Number two is, if it's culturally neutral, it doesn't have anything impermissible, so they're celebrating gore and the occult and magic and all that stuff, what's wrong with giving kids or taking candy? Nothing wrong with that. And that's the last point. If it does overtly involve those evil things like magic and sorcery, and you're not able to teach your kids like how to navigate that, then it's not allowed.
Okay. So this is his answer. It's a typical answer. He says, well, this is cultural. Like Halloween, this is a cultural thing, and what's wrong with giving candy? And as long as you're not doing like some magic seance with a witch and literally calling on the dark spirits, if you're not literally doing that, then what's wrong? There's no religious element here. No, there's no religious element. And just what pagans were doing 8,000 years ago, what pagans were doing like 6 million years ago, it doesn't matter to the practice today. So what's wrong? Like, what's your issue? What's your issue, man? And you're not capable of discussing this. You don't have the knowledge. Notice how he began the whole clip with, people don't have the knowledge. He has the knowledge. All right. So interestingly, he says that, well, Halloween is just cultural. And it's funny because these compassionate imams, when it comes to Halloween or 4th of July, like Independence Day or even Valentine's Day, they will use this kind of line of argumentation that, oh, that's not religious. Like Valentine's Day, dedicated to Saint Valentine, is not a religious thing. It's just, you're just going on a hot date with your wife, or you're having a romantic session with your wife. What's wrong with that? Giving her flowers and chocolates. Like, what's wrong with that? Like, so you can justify all of these cultural holidays with this kind of reasoning. And that's the point. Like, that's the kind of seed that he's planting in the minds of Muslims so that they will apply it to pretty much everything using this kind of logic. But for other holidays that are more religious, he has a similar view, or he also deems those to be allowed. So look at this. This was hit from 2012 on Christmas, December 25th. And he says the European Fatwa Council, made up of 20 of the world's greatest Muslim jurists, stated that it's permissible to greet people on these days and even exchange gifts, Christmas gifts, as long as it does not involve approving any creedal differences between us or open evil like drinking alcohol. In other words, a simple happy holidays is not a sin or going to take that person out of Islam. It is reported with authentic chains that Ali radiallahu anhu celebrated the Persian New Year, even eating ice cream with Imam Abu Hanifa's relative. Many of the fatwa quoted by sincere folks are rooted in an age of empire and war, i.e. the Crusades, or a social reality that does not fit ours in the West. Most importantly, a person should ask those who use words like haram, kuffar, halal, and encouraged about their religious training. Yelling and overblown emotionalism does not equal training and scholarship. Allah knows best. So much to analyze in this. And there was a kind of detailed refutation that we published several years ago on Muslim Skeptic by a very knowledgeable scholar. You can go to muslimskeptic.com, and the title is Greetings and Congratulating Non-Muslims on Their Holidays, Halal or Haram. So this article is looking at a number of scholars, including Yusuf al-Qaradawi, who is associated with the European Fatwa Council, also Hamza Yusuf and Abdullah bin Bayya, who also give a similar fatwa, and Suhaib Webb, so explicitly refuting this post. So what else? You can go to that if you want further details, like, for example, Ali celebrated the Persian New Year. What? So first of all, like, the narration is weak, so you can do it. It's not analysis of that. But even regardless of that, eating ice cream, like Ali eating ice cream, that means he's celebrating the New Year. He's celebrating, like you're adding a lot to these narrations to make it sound like this is what Ali radiallahu anhu, the fourth caliph, was doing. So then, so he says that in this post, he's saying, okay, Christmas, it has a religious basis. It's a religious holiday, but as long as you don't explicitly approve creedal differences, you don't explicitly say that, yes, Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. As long as you don't say that, then it's perfectly fine. Go ahead, go to the Christmas party, exchange gifts. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, everyone. Maybe wear a Santa costume. Why not? Santa has a nice, big, bushy, white beard. Just go and dress up as Santa. Bring on the reindeer. Well, it's just cultural, bro. It's just cultural. Don't you have the religious knowledge like me to know? Why not? So this is the This is the grift of Sohaib Webb. It doesn't matter what the holiday is, whether it's religious or cultural, secular or not. He has a justification. His knowledge, mashallah, his religious training that all these compassionate imams have, they're able to tell us that they're able to find a way. Where there's a will, there's a way to celebrate Christmas and Halloween and Easter and Valentine's Day. Where there's a will, there's a way. So this is Sohaib Webb's fiqh. This is his fiqh. This is his understanding, the level of his understanding. And again, he doesn't have any kind of concern about the bigger things that we talked about. And one of the key Islamic principles that he ignores very deliberately is tashabbuh. Tashabbuh bil kuffar, which means to imitate the kuffar. And this is something that is not very much discussed by compassionate imams because it goes contrary to assimilation. It goes contrary to adopting, especially in those practices that are explicitly contrary to Islam. It goes against adopting those practices like Halloween, like celebrating Independence Day or these other practices, these other cultural practices. So someone like Sohaib Webb and other compassionate imams, they are contributing to nationalism by nullifying this principle of tashabbuh bil kuffar. They're not teaching it. They're not even acknowledging this. Like, this is a factor. Like, imagine if in the United States, like, the government tomorrow says that, guess what? Everyone is going to be celebrating Chinese holidays, and we're going to start dressing in Chinese clothes, and we're going to start using Chinese expressions. And yeah, these holidays involve certain practices, and we're just all going to adopt that. In the United States, this is a decree, and it would be obvious that this is going to have a huge impact, especially if it's continued over a long period of time and children are involved in it. That's going to change the nature of the American people. It's going to change their culture. It's going to change their identity, their attitude. It's going to have huge repercussions over time. Everyone can recognize that. Like, you're going to be less American and more Chinese. So why can't we understand that when we adopt, especially like these holidays, especially like these holidays associated with rituals like trick-or-treating, dressing up in a costume, listening to certain music, watching certain movies, etc. Like, why can't we recognize that will have a huge effect on how we view ourselves as Muslims, how we identify? Like, are we just being taken over? Like, we are being mentally like taken over by a mind virus that's being implanted into our psyche? I think that's clear that that's what's happening. So even if you put aside the consideration of, okay, Halloween is based on a pagan holiday, Christmas is based on a religious celebration of Christians, so is Easter, etc. Even if we put aside that discussion, which is an important discussion, and I'm not saying that Sohaib Webb has gotten this correct in his evaluation, that, it's from 8,000 years ago, it's from 6 million years ago, therefore it's just cultural. Like, I'm not saying that that's a correct diagnosis from Sohaib Webb. But even if we put that aside, like, let's look at the bigger effects. Let's look at the bigger impact on the ummah. And the irony is that someone like Sohaib Webb and these other compassionate imams, these other modernist, wasatiyah, promoting modernists. If you don't know what this ideology of wasatiyah is, go watch one of our previous Haqiqat shows where we analyze this kind of modernist reform that's been promoted by figures like Yasser Qadi, Hatem al-Hajj, etc., and it's coming from, the colonial period. But these people who promote that are all about maslahah. They're all about, let's look at the maslahah, let's look at the mafsada, let's look at the public benefit. Let's not focus on the nitty-gritty of halal and haram. Let's not focus on the nitty-gritty of, the details of fiqh and the usul al-fiqh. Let's just override all of that with maslahah. Let's override that with maslahah. And things like, for example, when do you start the month of Ramadan? Do you do it through sighting the moon? As all the scholars have said, that's how the month begins. And this is from the Quran and Sunnah. Or can we resort to calculations, calculating the beginning of the month and when the moon is visible? And all the proponents of maslahah say that bypass the discussion of fiqh, they bypass the dalail, the proofs from the source texts, and they go immediately to a discussion of, well, look at the benefit of having a very clear calendar that you know in advance when the month starts. You can schedule things better. You can get vacation from your workplace so that you can better observe Ramadan or better observe Eid if you can calculate it in advance. Look at all these benefits. That's the maslahah reasoning. Look at the maslahah of the entire world, the entire ummah coming together on one Eid, coming together on one beginning of the month of Ramadan because they all adopt calculation. Isn't that such a great benefit as opposed to sighting where the moon is not visible in certain parts of the world at the same time, or it might be cloudy or whatever, what have you? Isn't that a great benefit? This is maslahah reasoning. So they want to do that for everything, but when it comes to like an issue that so clearly has a harm, it's actually harming the ummah on a macro scale and a micro scale. They get into technicality. They get into, well, is it technically haram to go and give candy on one particular day of the year? And is it technically haram to dress up in a costume on one particular day of the year and to gather? Is it technically haram? Suddenly they're all about technicality. They're all about looking at the granular details, the nitty gritty. as opposed to looking at, well, what is the bigger impact? Interesting double standard. It always, I mean, it's a double standard when it comes to Islam, but when it comes to the dominant culture, the monoculture, it always goes one way. How can we better accept and adopt and assimilate to this monoculture? And it's just a matter of how can we justify that according to fiqh? And that's what makes these compassionate imams so famous. You know, even if we put aside the fact that they get state support and they are sponsored and platformed by state institutions, very powerful liberal institutions, even when we put that aside, they just cater to people's desires. They cater to a desire for people to fit in and adopt what is the dominant culture, as opposed to resist that, or as opposed to be independent from that, or cultivate a Islamic identity, an Islamic way of life that is independent of the way of life that is imposed on us, or we are told that there's no other way. There's no other way. It's either the liberal, secular, feminist path of life, or it's nothing. And anything other than that is going to be, it's either barbaric, it is closed-minded, it is irrational, or it is even like terroristic. So compassionate imams are not willing to step in and counter that or challenge that, and that contributes to their popularity. That contributes to their worldwide acclaim and fame. So now we see masajid who, alhamdulillah, they've been shamed. And this is the power of shaming. This is the power of shaming culture, and this is the power of the haram police. Okay? There's nothing wrong with the haram police. Always remember that.